Jabulani Selumane is the CEO of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, a mechanical engineer by profession. Mr. Selumane has over a decade of experience in the South African automotive industry, joining one of the world's leading premium automotive manufacturers, BMW Group, at the company's flagship Roslyn plant in Tshwane.
I think I wouldn't say failed. I would say the economic growth of the South African market, the pace of it obviously has not supported the organic growth in which the sector would thrive in, and therefore equals to creating a lot more opportunities for transformation to happen. As I said to you, in the main, we've been eating in the same pie that we've always had. So the importance of understanding that transformation is nothing but an economic subject. In that you need organic growth of the economy in order to create newer opportunities, because newer opportunities bring new jobs, bring new technology and skills and so on. So I think for me, that's high school doing motor mechanics. So that's what inspired me to follow a career in the motor industry. But yes, I am. I in fact did my mechanical engineering, or I started at TUT, then TNG. I was fortunate as an athlete to be able to get a scholarship to go and study overseas to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering and so on.
The Groundbreakers, Mondays to Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. on TUT FM.
I was surprised to see this feature appearing on the Mail and Guardian. This week, quite surprised to see that. And I know that Khopotsa Seth Shawane has begun by writing a piece on this particular story, but it has caught some traction as well with big publications, including the Mail and Guardian, writing about this particular feature this week. So go and check it out there in terms of when you watch it. But otherwise, you can also go onto our social media platforms. We are TUT FM 96.2. Let me give you just a brief sense of the men we are bringing, again in line with what we usually do. From the first show, which debuted on the 10th of April, we've brought in the heavyweights, really, people who are deep into their professional space, who have navigated some tricky terrains to get where they are, and well placed to give us a view or two about their respective industries. Now, the man we are talking to today is none other than Mr. Jabulani Selumane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. Now, Mr. Jabulani Selumane is the CEO of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, a mechanical engineer by profession. Mr. Selumane has over a decade of experience in the South African automotive industry, joining one of the world's leading premium automotive manufacturers, BMW Group, at the company's flagship Roslyn plant in Tshwane in 2009. Starting with BMW Group South Africa as a system planner engineer, he rose through the ranks as of a management and served as manager at the Cooperative Strategy Planning and Business Development, Head of Cooperative Investment and Transformation, and Head of Government and External Affairs, respectively. Passionate about the catalytic potential of a transformed automotive sector to the South African economy, he served as a member of the Board of Trustees of BMW Group Skills and Enterprise Suppliers Development ESD Trust between 2017 and 2019. Now, Mr. Selumane was appointed CEO of AITF in 2020 and works with all OEMs with production facilities in South Africa as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. Since assuming the reins, Mr. Selumane has ably steered the AITF in pursuit of its mandate to facilitate transformation across the sector's entire value chain. His area of exceptional expertise is that of enterprise and supplier development, including procurement strategy development. Speaking at the inaugural Black Industrialist and Exporters Conference held in July 2022, Mr. Selumane noted that AITF was gratified to see how black-owned component beneficiaries continue to benefit from the fund's support and are taking their place in the competitive value chain. A seasoned public affairs and PR professional, he oversaw the launch of the first in-car telematics project in South Africa in the early 2000s as a manager connected drive services for BMW Group South Africa. Mr. Selumane holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering BSME from Alabama A&M University, which he completed in 2008, where he made the Dean's List and was also a scholar athlete. Now, that's the man I'm talking about. Now, digest that. I'm bringing him on the line in a moment. It's going to be a broad conversation. I like how he's obsessed about transformation and how he has been in that transformation space for quite some times. We'll bring him in a moment. Let's take a quick break. Remind you, this is like a graduate on TUT FM. His name is Mr. Jabulani Selumane. I've given you his biography. It's, if you think of a resume, it's so impressive. That for a lack of better word. Let me try and see if he is on the line to me now. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. Jabulani, thank you so much for your time. Good evening.
Good evening, Obakeng Mooketsi. Thank you for having me, and it's an absolute privilege to be on your show.
A decade of experience in the South African automotive industry, and today we are exploring a rather loaded topic here is the economic transformation in the local automotive business. But before we get to that, though, I'm interested in the AITF and what that is. Just give us a bit more sense so that we understand. I know you are the CEO there. I mean, what is AITF and when was it that's established?
Yeah, thank you very much, Obakeng Mooketsi. I think the AITF Automotive Industry Transformation Fund is a company formed as a non-profit company by the 7 local manufacturers who are multinationals. Just to give color to that, in the inland we have BMW, Nissan, as well as Ford. In the coastland we have Toyota, VW, Mercedes-Benz, and Isuzu. Those are the 7 members who have formed the AITF for the purpose of them complying with the BBBE element, particularly on the ownership element, as required by the DTIC, for them to elevate and raise the level of compliance to 100% or level 4.
Yeah.
They pursued a project to look at how is it that they can put together a structure that addresses their ownership challenges, because they were unable to get to certain levels of compliance, particularly on the ownership element, because they are.
Are you there, Jabulani? Jabulani, are you there? Right, we seem to have lost Jabulani on the line. We'll try and bring him back. I'm not sure what the problem is there with connectivity.
Because government had linked the compliance of BBBE to the access of incentives that they have access to towards the DTIC. So we then pursued what is called an equity equivalent investment program with the DTIC, started negotiations since 2015. Just to get 7 OEMs to agree and have a singular view on one program until 2019, I think it was the moment task.
Yeah.
But ultimately, obviously, gave birth to the AITF, to which is implementing this equity equivalent investment program on behalf of the 7 OEMs who started it. So yeah, we are facilitating that. And the backbone of our program, simply put, is to try and reflect equity that could not be sold by these 7 companies to Black people, have that reflected in its value chain. So, for example, before 2015, we had less than 1% of companies that are participating in the value chain, particularly upstream or component manufacturing.
Yeah.
And ours is to try and grow the number by including Black-owned companies into the value chain so that it can grow up to 25% gross value add by 2035. So we're trying to have the equity that should have been sold reflected in the value chain through procurement activities.
Yeah. So do you have bodies that you are registered with?
Yeah, I mean, as a fund, we have to, because we're an accountable institution, very important to link up with FICA. Part of us to be trusted because we are managing funds on behalf of companies who have given us the mandate to deploy them towards qualifying beneficiaries. So that is very important for us to have that lending. But we are also plugged in with different associations to whom some of them obviously operate in the automotive sector. For example, an institution called the Automotive Business Council, which houses not only local manufacturers but importers of car manufacturers that are present in South Africa. So there are various touch points, including the DTIC themselves, meaning government, because obviously this is a compliance activity that we are running.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So if you do have a question at all throughout the conversation that we're going to have, it's going to be a long conversation. Start sending those questions now. The number is 012 382 9257. 012 382 9257. Ask any question. If you want to get into that space or you are into that particular space, we do have the Chief Executive Officer of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. Jabulani, do we have any success stories since the fund has been there? How have you been able to change the space, as it were?
Yeah, I think great question. So we have started to fully operate actually after the agreement in 2019. We sort of set to set up a company in 2020 during those hard lockdown days. So we spent 2020 setting up the business. We started to operate actually from 2021. So if you count until the end of 2023, it was about 3 years since we started to do our job.
Yeah.
We have, I think, happy to report that we have supported about 54 businesses to date, to whom I think a majority of them operate in both the up and the downstream of the sector.
Yeah.
And one of the other things for me, which is a very good success story to report on, is the fact that if you look at the sector's policy environment and the government policy that supports the automotive sector, it was gender silent, meaning it talked a lot more about Black ownership or Black entrepreneur and so on, but it was silent in terms of women-owned businesses taking part into the automotive sector. One of the things that we did was to then to counter that, ring fence about 30% of the funds that we managed to go directly towards women-owned businesses. And today, happy to report that we are tracking at 60% instead of 30%, so we've gone even beyond those numbers. And I mean, some of the companies that we support are producing components that you would normally find in a car, whether it's painted body parts or whether it's a raw material that ends up in remanufacturing and so on. So there has been quite a number of activities that we have supported, including acquisition of some of the companies. For example, we have a white-owned, historically owned business, which we then obviously try and get Black-owned companies to then buy equity into those firms to take over and so on, because ours is to increase the share of companies that are participating. So there has been good stories. We have deployed close to about 400 million to date. And the companies that we support have received contracts from the 7 OEMs of close to up 20 billion to date in long-term contract, which is a good story to tell in just 3 years.
Yeah. So what is your training model?
Yeah. So we, as I said, because we are addressing an inclusion of historically disadvantaged companies into the value chain, 51% black ownership is our minimum criteria when we find. So you need to be able to have that. And whatever transaction that we support must lead into majority owned black ownership. For example, if someone approaches us, they are 100% black owned and they're trying to acquire a company, they can't acquire minority stakehold in the automotive sector. They must acquire the majority, shareholding of the particular business. And we insist in the main to get companies to be rather entrepreneurs, because we're trying to counter, if you know the way PE has evolved, sort of had people who have benefited more than once and keep coming back for beneficiation. So to include new people into the environment, we insist that we have entrepreneurs that are running the business and not just people who have an economic benefit. They're able to have voting rights, participate in the management of the business, and so on. But most importantly, I think we try and de-risk things like customer concentration. For example, if someone comes in and BMW has given them a contract, we try and scale them up in negotiating with the likes of Nissan so that we can obviously try and ensure that we grow their revenue base. I mean, particularly in the sector, I can tell you, this is a high revenue environment, but low margins. So it's important that you focus on, I think, creating more added customer base within the sector in order that you have a sustainable company model that you as you support. But I think the most important thing that underpins our operating model is we do not only fund with instruments such as loan, grants, and so on, but we also advocate quite strongly for access to market, because I think in the main, what is lacked in South Africa is that people can have access to capital, but if you do not have it backed by a contract, it makes it very difficult for it to be sustainable and so on. But I think also accompanying that is the ability to provide business development support. For example, some people are well technically inclined but lack soft skills. The AITF tries to intervene in finding them relevant skills in that business, whether it's financial management, whereas to help them to have a better development plan for their business, because especially startups, when they start, they need to have a business development plan that sort of takes them to maturity. And for that to happen, you need a direct intervention of doing some kind of a gap analysis, understanding what are the gaps in that businesses from the owners and also from the business model that entrepreneur is running, so that we can intervene and assist the beneficiaries to be able to run. So we've got 3 elements: access to care, access to capital, access to markets, as well as access to capacity development.
Right. And I'm glad that you've raised the issue of the BEE. In a moment, we'll try and of course, move towards the economic transformation proper. I was just really trying to pick your brain, which I think is quite important given your decade of experience in that particular field. And I'm happy that you raised the part about BEE. Many are saying it's a great idea, but its strength depends on the implementation, and it need to be done in a proper way. If not, it might be inimical to the very success that we want. In the automotive space, has there been movement forward as a result of BEE, or would you say perhaps it has been badly implemented as a result, has not yielded the right results?
From our perspective, I think OEMs, or the automotive sector, the 7 OEMs who produce currently in this market, I think must be complimented for having a singular view in terms of how transformation is. I think for me, when I speak about transformation, to be quite honest, I'd like to put in less of philanthropic lenses and look at it from a business perspective. Because when you're dealing with multinationals, it's important that you're able to present a very firm business case in terms of why this needs to work.
Yeah.
For example, the companies that I hear in South Africa, retailing cars and all of that, they do need a market. A market currently in South Africa is quite low. Why? Because Black people aren't participating in the economy, therefore cannot afford these products. So my advocacy at all times is that the importance of ensuring that you include Black people who are a majority in this country into the mainstream economy allows for the market to develop organically. So the importance of that, I think, has been embraced by the sector in flagging in to try and so help, however, as best as they can to sort of boost the economy by including participants in it, and hence the formations of the same structures such as the AITF. I think what we've seen is also reflected in their scorecard. I mean, when we started with this project, a lot of companies were sitting at level, which is the lowest level of compliance.
Yeah.
Today, they are sitting at level 1, level 2. Actually, all of them are beyond 100% compliant. So on. And I think what is pleasing is they're not doing it only for the purposes of ticking the box. I think they're doing it from a business modeling perspective. And I think let me spend some time digging into that so that we can give it perspective.
Yeah.
So the South African automotive sector in its formation serves a lot more of an export market because, as I said, the local consumption is quite low. So about 70% of the volume that is produced in South Africa is geared for export to many, many different markets across the world, in the main, mostly the European Union and so on.
Yeah.
So it means our customer base for the production that we have is sitting somewhere. Actually, if you look at where we are from a geographical perspective, we're sitting on the southern tip of Africa. It means the input costs to transporting, making a car towards and then shipping it out for those destinations increases the cost of production and so on. So now South Africa needs to see itself as one market that's competing for volume or production volume against other markets in the world. For example, Thailand that's come out quite strong, putting policies in place to support local production and so on. Mexico has also come to the party. You know about the story about China.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm trying to paint here is the importance of looking at transformation from the business lens, from how we fit into the global ecosystem. If I were to tell you today, the sector production share against global is sitting at 0.6%. Only now we are looking to grow by to 1% by 2035, meaning we are making about 600,000 cars today. We are looking to get to about 1.3 million cars by 2035 in order for us to be deemed competitive and have the right level of influence. That influence, what does it do for us? It means we have a better prosperity against other plans globally. It means we have the opportunity to grow localization because it's through the growing of localization where you've got an expansion of opportunities to then include Black-owned companies. Because otherwise we'll have a situation where we are eating from the same pie, not creating new jobs, not creating new skills, but I think sort of circulating the same funds in a small volume. So we are looking to look at this from a business case perspective, which I think the OEMs in this case have done a fantastic job because they also want to position Black-owned companies towards global.
Right. We are in conversation now with the Chief Executive Officer of our Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, Jabulani Selumane, who's on the line to us now. And obviously what we are looking at today is the economic transformation in the local automotive business. As I said, it's a very, very loaded topic, and he's unpacking it for us, drawing from a decade strong of automotive experience. It's a good source to drink from. Let me take a quick break. When we return, we continue. We are 96.2 FM. And remember, if you wanted to have any question at all, you can send your questions on 012 0891-382-9257. Otherwise, we are TUT FM 96.2 on our social media platforms on Facebook, TUT FM 96.2, on both Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. We are TUT FM underscore 96.2. Also, you can listen to us live from wherever you are in and around the world on www.tutfm96.2.co.za. Quite experienced, I'm sure he can take it and give you an advice in terms of how to navigate this space. Let's get back to this conversation, Jabulani. Hopefully you are on the line.
Yes.
All right. So let's get back to this. I mean, I've seen a lot of industries that initially were too powerful, but it appears to me that the automotive industry is faring well, even under difficult economic circumstances. I mean, what is the role of the automotive industry in the economy?
Yeah, I think as a contributor just below 6% to GDP, both split obviously within the upstream and the downstream, meaning retail and distribution, so it's component and manufacturing respectively. I think the sector accounts to almost close to about 30% of the manufacturing output, and I think creates a lot of jobs, about 110 direct jobs, and obviously if you were to take into account the ripple effect per job and look at the families that the sector's employees have, I think it's a significant amount of jobs that are created. So I think, but in the main, I think the sector is well positioned and driving industrialization in South Africa, which is much needed if you look at from a technological perspective. For example, we're sitting at the cornerstone of a transition. We know that the global automotive sector is evolving, moving from what we traditionally know as an internal combustion engine car to new energy vehicles, whether these are powered via battery electric capabilities or hydrogen fuel cells. So all of this, I think, adds a very positive spin to exposure that the South African market obviously will have in industrialization, whether in battery manufacturing, whether in creating componentry that I think attracts new technology in the market for us to be able to participate in. So I think the sector does a lot for the South African economic landscape and so on. I think very important to protect this particular sector as it's a key contributor, as I said.
How are we faring, though, in comparison to our international or continental counterparts? Are we up there with the best?
We are. I think South Africa currently is still the biggest producer of vehicles in the continent. Obviously, the likes of Morocco are beginning to come through quite strongly. And I think the difference is the proximity to markets. It's the difference in this case because I think they're very closer to Europe. But I think if you look at the rest of the sub-Saharan area, it's still under development. I think in the main due to some policies that were not in favor of producing new cars. Because if you look at a lot of countries in Africa, they have a lot of second-hand vehicles that are sort of dumped into the continent from other markets. And I think that requires policy intervention and regulatory environment to be able to cap that and create a very new ecosystem of the new sales of vehicles in the continent. So I think there is potential, but South Africa, if you compare it against its African counterparts, I think it's currently ahead of the curve.
Right.
And it needs to be maintained. And I think the conversation we're having earlier on about us remaining competitive is very important in ensuring that we obviously become the gateway to developing some of the countries in the continent. Because if we're going to grow the sector, we need to create a customer base in the continent. So the cars that we produce, there needs to be some sort of a trade activity that happens between us and some of the countries in the continent for us to be able to sort of grow our own market and not depend on just fully exporting cars to outside the continent and so on. But I think South Africa, just simply put, to answer your question, is sort of ahead of the curve.
You raise an important issue around policies as well, because that is important in terms of the overall picture of transformation. Are you able to influence? I mean, the simple question here is, how much communication are you having, in fact, with the policymakers to ensure that whatever policies are made there are not inimical to the growth of the automotive industry? And are you getting any audience? Are we moving the needle ahead?
Yeah. Fortunately, with us, due to the Equity Cuban Investment Program, because it's a program that is, monitored heavily by the DTIC, and the OEMs obviously have to comply to that program, and the DTIC is the one who sort of marks their script. It allows us and gains us audience with the policymakers in having the ability to be able to sort of have a policy influence or lobby in order to ensure that South Africa obviously remains competitive. So we do engage a lot with government in order to be able to shape policy. But I think what is important to note as far as the policy environment is that, the automotive sectors currently benefit a lot from what is called the APDP, policy, Automotive Production Development Program, which dates back as far as when we transitioned into democracy. So if I were to give a bit of history, before 1994, South Africa used to build cars for its own consumption only. So it had very low production volumes. And post 1994, there was an idea that in order for us to have scale, create jobs, and be able to participate in the broader industrialization, it was important to be able to have a policy that sort of incentivizes and has a vision to grow the sector and so on. So that's where the APDP was born, which, as I was saying earlier on, focuses on ensuring that we move from a low base of 0.6 global share to 1% by 2035, ensuring that we grow and double the number of jobs that are created today, ensuring that we move from below 40% of local content to about 60% by 2035, ensure that we improve the local infrastructure and develop the market locally. I think those are some of the policy interventions that the sector has, in agreement with the DTIC, put in place so that the sector has got a lot of competitiveness as well as transformation happening in it. So I think there are a lot of gateways in which we interact with policy.
And of course, again, the word transformation rears its head. It's been used so loosely at times that I wonder what transformation means. What does a transformed automotive industry look like? In other words, what kind of transformation, what shape and form does transformation take within that context?
Yeah, great question. I think transformation for me can be defined in two different parts. One is to transform the sector, obviously, as a whole. Now we're not talking about black participation. We're talking about a sector that is able to competitively, have a business case that's viable globally, to be the natural choice of production. So when the headquarters overseas are thinking about an area where larger production volume needs to be held, they think about South Africa because it has developed capability locally to be able to produce, the product required by the rest of the world and so on. For me, I think South Africa needs to navigate from where it is to transform in becoming a natural choice when it comes to volume allocation. That's one form of transformation. Where it has, the prosperity required to compete from a business case perspective, because currently, remember, there is an incentive program that sort of subsidizes the local environment in making it competitive. So you want that you have created a capability for a self-sustainable model locally to be able to compete globally. Then number two, we are operating in a country that has got history where Black people didn't participate. But in order for us to create this capability that I spoke about, it's important that we begin to create Black local capability. So meaning inclusion of companies and people that were previously and historically disadvantaged into the value chain so that you are able to, in the future, have less imports and have the ability to produce goods and products locally for the benefit of strengthening the business case and ensuring that obviously the production input cost makes sense. So I think those are the two boxes in which I would speak to.
Right. I'll focus on the second box then, which is developing black local capabilities. How do you suggest we go about that?
Another great question. Look, I think we've got a very clear South African automotive master plan that says, this is where we need to be by X date, in this case, 2035. But I think the most important thing is creating, because I think the threat that we are faced with in the South African market is you do not want that globally there is a strategy that says production must be nearer or must be closer to consumption, right? We have 70% of the cars that we produce geared for export, right? So it could be that, these companies are thinking about putting another plant nearer to where the consumption is. But in order to do that, it's important that we focus on creating local capability. So, and here we are using our toolbox. Toolbox that the sector has put in place is the AITF. What do? We take the funds that they make available and we file into companies that are black-owned so that they can participate in the value chain. And we are flexible in how we fund because we don't see ourselves typically like a bank. Right. Neither do we see ourselves like a development finance institution. We see ourselves as an enabler. So the instrument, for example, we take into account when we give someone a loan, we are mindful of the environment that they are participating in, which is highly volatile. So our pricing is well considered. We take into account giving things like longer moratoria. We take into account ensuring that there's business support that is put in, but also, as I said earlier on, diversifying the customer mix so that they're able to be a lot more sustainable. So we've been plugged in to be able to provide that particular support towards the inclusion of black-owned companies. Because if this intervention is not there, in many cases, you would find that a lot of startups will not have the ability to enter into highly regulated, highly accredited sectors such as the automotive sector. So the importance of us being there is to be able to bridge that gap, work with companies and assist them to be able to limit some of these entries of the barriers of entry.
Right. What, in your view, have we failed to achieve in terms of achieving economic transformation within that particular space?
I think I wouldn't say failed. I would say that the economic growth of the South African market, the pace of it obviously has not supported the organic growth in which the sector would thrive in, and therefore equals to creating a lot more opportunities for transformation to happen. As I said to you, in the main, we've been eating in the same pie that we've always had. So the importance of understanding that transformation is nothing but an economic subject. In that you need organic growth of the economy in order to create newer opportunities, because newer opportunities bring new jobs, bring new technology and skills and so on. So I think for me, I wouldn't say it's a failure of transformation, particularly for the sector. I would say perhaps the slow pace of the economic development of South Africa, obviously within reason in some of these cases where you've had some of the interruptions, because, for example, when we started with the fund, we had COVID, hard lockdowns, we had affecting the supply of certain key materials that we needed for production, and this slows down productive activities. But all of these are geopolitical activities that have happened that contributes to the broader economic landscape lagging behind, which obviously affect the creation of new opportunities. So I don't see it more as a failure. I see it more as obviously when the economy grows, I see an organic growth with the sector and equals to more transformation and so on. But I think another thing that is important that needs to be focused on is how do we then integrate our basic education system to be in line, directly proportional to the modern economy. For example, if you go to a school today, you go to a primary, they still have the old engine, so it's got a carburetor and so on, and that product is no longer in the market. So I think to create a very cohesive, well aligned educational curriculum structure that sort of talks to how the technology is evolving real time becomes a very important aspect to that. And we've seen some of the OEMs going beyond the lines, partnering with schools to be able to positively affect curriculum. I know in Soshanguve there are a couple of schools.
Of course.
Companies being able to do that. I think for me that becomes very key, because what you are doing is you are creating a cohort of a pipeline of future workers of the sector, of future entrepreneurs of the sector, and so on. And I think that is why this conversation is also quite key to have with yourself, because if you look at tertiary levels, there needs to be a link also in getting the students to understand how they can interface with the sector. What are some of the opportunities in the sector that are there for them to pursue as they are about to either graduate or start in that we were able to close the gap. For example, just to give you one piece, we recently partnered with TUT Institute for Future of Works, and we took about a cohort of 25 women-owned businesses and tailor-made a curriculum focused on dealer development and so on. And they just recently, I think in December, graduated. So it shows you the importance of connecting to sort of an educational center, or in order to be able to begin to close the gap of a pipeline. That way, we don't sit here later and say we can't find these entrepreneurs who even develop. I think for me, that's what the opportunity is.
That's a very strong point that you are raising there. It's 20 exactly after the hour 8. If you have any question at all, the number is 012-382-9257. Keep those coming. We'll forward those to our guest here on the line, Jabulani Selumane, who's the Chief Executive Officer of our Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. We take another quick turn. When we return, the conversation does continue. This is Plug a Graduate. We are TUT FM. That space now where we're having a conversation. In case you've just walked in, we do have a couple of questions that are coming in. Well, got 4, couple means 2, but we do have our guest. And I like what Jabulani is saying about developing the leaders that we want to see, developing that appetite from the people we want to see into that particular space. And it's raising an issue around schools with which they have partnered to make sure that happen. And one of the guests that we normally have on a Monday, Mengubeni from the Tebohana School of Specialization, would talk specifically about this. And that is exactly what we're doing, also aligning our program with the opportunities that we see within the context of how the economy looks like now. And that's exactly what I think need to happen. Use the programs and opportunities that we have to really target directly the issues that we are having, even in terms of schools from which these matriculants start from. It should start there. And of course, Jabulani, we have a question coming in, and this is from Lesego in Centurion in Pretoria. And he's saying, "Hi, Obakeng. I'm a first-time listener and a TUT alumni. I just tuned in now. I think I missed your intro. Is Jabu a qualified motor engineer, or is it about the love of the industry?" Thanks. That question is to you, hey, Jabu.
Thank you very much. I am a qualified mechanical engineer by profession. I left high school doing motor mechanics, so that's what inspired me to follow a career in the motor industry. But yes, I am. I in fact did my mechanical engineering, or I started at TUT, then TNG, I was fortunate as an athlete to be able to get a scholarship to go and study overseas to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering and so I am qualified.
Thank you so much, Lesego from Centurion, a TUT alumni and a first-time listener. You are indeed welcome. Just for your information, Lesego, let me start this. And she has admitted that she has missed the intro. And let me break this down to you because you are very, very special to the show as a first-time listener, and everyone is. It's a broad family. Listen to this, Lesego. Well, Jabulani Selumane is a mechanical engineer, and that's his biography. He's a mechanical engineer by profession. Mr. Selumane has over a decade of experience in the South African automotive industry, joining one of the world's leading premium automotive manufacturers, BMW Group, at the company's flagship Roslyn plant in Tshwane in 2009. Starting with BMW Group South Africa as a system planner engineer, he rose through the ranks of management and served as manager at the Cooperative Strategy, Planning and Business Development, head at the Cooperative Investment and Transformation, and head of the Government and External Affairs, respectively. There you go. I'll leave it there. So I'm sure you are answered. I was just really dilating on that particular answer that he has given you. I think he's very, very brief. Wouldn't really like to blow his own trumpet, I would imagine, Jabu. But let's talk about the challenges that the industry is facing. There seem to be, for any business, in fact, that the odds are stacked heavily against them. But what are the challenges that the local automotive industry is facing?
Yeah, I think in the main, while is the rest of the world has moved a bit faster than our market in terms of the product development.
Yeah.
As I said, the adoption of newer technologies from the rest of the world has happened much more quicker because of the policy tones of where the customer is sitting elsewhere in the world. For example, the EU region making proclamations that by 2030 they would not allow a new sale of an internal combustion car in the market. And this is the market that we largely export to. So the importance of being ready to be able to produce the car or product suited for that market, that has been quite slow. But it's also because I think there has been a lot of discussions that have been happening between the policymaker as well as the sector in adopting, policy environment that's suited to attract the right level of investment to promote that part of that type of technology.
Yeah.
So I think what we've seen is obviously government, did ultimately respond and put together a policy environment support that sort of helps the sector to be able to attract the right levels of products and services to be manufactured here. I mean, as we speak today, Toyota is producing a plug-in hybrid cars in Durban.
Yeah.
Ford just announced they'll do the same. BMW announced that they are going to be going into the same type of model. In fact, they were talking about, also the promotion of hydrogen fuel cells and so on. So I think Mercedes-Benz in the East London area, they're also producing plug-in hybrid vehicles. So the adoption has started to come to the fore, but I think maybe a bit late in some of the cases. But I think also the transition towards the new energy vehicle is not going to go at the pace that we earlier thought it's going to go.
Yeah.
Because OEMs themselves globally are no longer technologically neutral. So not everyone is saying, let's produce a battery electric vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
They are looking at diversifying different ways in which they can power the vehicle. And like I said, there could be hydrogen fuel and other forms that can be used to power. But I think South Africa also needs to have a very strong proposition. For the first time, I think we sit at a privileged position to be able to beneficiate some of the minerals that we have towards the battery manufacturing. So I think a very cohesive, well-structured conversation to be able to look at what minerals can we produce, beneficiate, in order for us to have products finally and commodities that we can sell to the rest of the world in this new energy vehicle transition is going.
But somebody who doesn't understand the industry well might have a layman's view in saying we have the same problem as well in the mining industry, where we seem to be having oodles and oodles of minerals, but the issue is we always have to take them, export them, and it comes back a lot more expensive. And somebody was saying, do we have the enough skill set then to make sure that we are able to self-sufficiently produce everything in the country, export it as a complete product? Do we have that? And what do we need to invest in for us to get at least to that point?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that are in South Africa that are currently supplying not only cars, but components to the rest of the world. So I think capability has been built over a period of time, and I think South Africa has that capability. I think the issue is have we put in the business and the policy environment that sort of complements the capability that we have. I think for a very long time, South Africa has spent a lot of time wanting to do almost everything. I think we need to get into a conversation of choices.
Yeah.
Select key capabilities that we know we're very strong at and focusing on those industries. For example, let's say we are now moving towards battery energy vehicles, or in any case, it's going to be a lot of battery storage in cars, whether they are powered only through batteries or in other forms.
Yeah.
With that increase, calls for a lot of cables or harnesses to be, high-powered harnesses, and that is copper.
Yeah.
We do have mines, Halabura, that we can mine copper as long as obviously it's to the specifications required. So I think there is certainly activities and minerals that we can look at mining and beneficiating locally. But I think it's going to require that there's a good, very clear collaborative effort from different sectors, obviously government setting the right political tone, which I think they have responded to now in order to be able to do the same. Because I think if you listen to Minister Patel in his exit speech, he was speaking about the effort that government has made to collaborate with other countries in the continent who have other minerals that are quite strategic for battery manufacturing, in order that as a continent we're able to take advantage of the African continental free trade area, which is a trade agreement that exists in the continent, to be able to trade amongst each other in creating, I think, value that we can sell to.
Right. Let me get to a question here from Anonymous, who's saying, how does someone who have done PR enter into that space, and what opportunities are there in AITF?
Someone who's done what?
How does someone who have done PR, I suppose that's public relations?
PR,
yes,
public relations.
There you go.
Yeah. So the sector is quite broad. As I said, if I were to define it in this way, you've got upstream, which is more component manufacturing and car production. So someone has to make a part from raw material, and that part has to be put into a component which fits the design of a car that it is ultimately into a car. That's more upstream activities. Downstream is retail and distribution. As soon as the car is made, it's got to be moved around, sold to somebody, whether abroad or local. But I think in between the two sits sales and marketing, which obviously facilitate how retail is going to be facilitated. These companies, obviously, from a communication or external and internal stakeholder perspective, they do need, public relation activities or skills, whether we're talking about marketing, but in this case, let's focus on public relations.
Right.
When I worked at BMW, for example, I was head of government relations, external affairs. That is more of a PR activity, because PR is more of a stakeholder management activity. Whether you're focusing on just broader, external affairs, it could be business to business, or you have business to government. I think there is space in the automotive sector to be able to facilitate and play that role, especially in this country. We have got a lot of policies that obviously are assisting the sector to be able to thrive. I mentioned the APDP policy, so it forces interfacing with the sector. So you do need, that element of public relations to come to the fore, representing obviously these companies that operate in the sector to interface with the sector, but also to interface with the general public in terms of how the company, how the business is faring, for example, from a sales perspective, from a activation perspective, and all of that. So I think there is a lot of room for definitely public relations.
There you go. I suppose that answer, Anonymous, does answer you. Now, I want us to go back to the issue of challenges and just how business has been complaining about load shedding. We've seen days and days of no load shedding, and how fun has it been for South Africa basking on the sun while it still shines. But how inimical to the transformation that you are talking about is load shedding as part of the challenges that the industry is facing?
Yeah, fortunately, I think broadly, some of the municipalities to which these OEMs operated in have protected production in the main, and obviously exempt these companies from being load shed.
Yeah,
if I may put it that way.
Right.
I think the inverse of it is that these companies have made investments also to be able to assist government, for example, putting in renewable energy solutions in order that there's less dependency on load required from ESCOM or municipality. But we've also seen the likes of, and there's a transaction that we supported at the AITF. It's called the Bio 2 Watt. It's a project where a company sitting in Braamfontein owned by a black family. So they take the cow dung and they turn that into a methane gas, producing energy and supplying, for example, BMW with 30% of energy, with that. So I think there has been lots of efforts that OEMs or these companies have not, they're putting a lot of effort, they've not set back in saying there's load shedding and so on. So I think all of these interventions have helped to be able to create, still in the midst of these big power cuts, challenges and solutions and so on.
Right. Kabelo Sibanyoni, your question is still coming. We've got another question as well from Utsile Lenyai from Soshanguve residents. But what I wanted for you to talk to us about the technological trends in the automotive industry and whether we are able to keep up with those.
Yeah, so we are plugged into a global ecosystem, and technology is forever evolving.
Yeah.
I think for me, South Africa needs to strengthen its innovative capability. I think we need to think about how we move from consuming to producing,
right?
Innovating. And I think for me, that's where the importance of working with young people to sort of give an exposure into the sector can unlock innovation, come with new ideas, but it needs to be powered. And this is why I say the importance of exposing learners into the sector goes a long way, so that we are able to not be left behind, but rather think about how we can, pour into the cup of innovation that we always consume. So I think for me, that's how we need to think about mitigating the risk we have against us plugging into the global ecosystem.
Right. And when you talk about technology, many were talking about artificial intelligence and how that is going to be the buzzword affecting each and every industry, including the automotive industry. Others are worrying this advent might actually be the enemy of jobs. Some fearing that this could be, the beginning of jobs being lost en masse. I mean, are we ready for AI, and how central is it in terms of the broader economic transformation that you are talking about?
Yeah, so for me, every time when I hear that challenge being thrown, I already say we have always been geared to be workers. and so much to a point that we are scared of being workers, and we're thinking when something happens, it's going to affect us to lose working. We need to think about how we can potentially plugging into a conversation of solving.
Yeah.
We need to think about activating our entrepreneurial activities in order to not see the risk. So for me, I see the future worker is the future entrepreneur coming with solutions to be able to sell. And that's why the importance of giving exposure to as many people as we can, as early as possible, will sort of unlock that everything is no longer a threat. Because remember, it's a threat because people don't have the knowledge of what's happening globally. They hear about AI, but they don't come into face-to-face with AI to understand how they can participate in it. So I think for me, that's why I keep emphasizing on the need to interface young people as early as possible in the dynamic, real-time economy of activities, products, and services as we go along. That way, they can see their new role in the economy. And that role, obviously, will always have workers. But I think we need to grow the mindset of also thinking about innovators, entrepreneurs, people who are solving problems rather than just executing. We'll have to obviously have the right balance. But I think the culture we need to think about creating amongst young people is that they can be solvers in
And for AI not to be a boogie, you've also spoken about how we need to align our education to these futuristic changes that are quite inevitable, and we need to begin to live with those changes now. Would that be an idea, perhaps, to study it at a high school, introduce it at a tertiary level, perhaps, maybe study it at the high school as a lesson, so that when these learners do grow to get into an industry that would have transformed immensely at the time, they don't find it a completely strange idea.
Yeah. So I think tertiary is late. For me, it's just basic education. Primary school. The exposure needs to start. The exposure into robotics. That is why I like the idea of schools of specialization.
Yes,
they do. Is they look at certain industries and schooling system very close to those industries, and then model the curriculum to be able to focus on those industries. What that does, it creates an ecosystem of sort of giving a natural exposure. One, for example, I did a project when I was at BMW, where we looked at Soshanguve Technical High School and sort of influenced curriculum and gave them a car that we are producing, but also gave them exposure to the plant. So I think what companies need to do to create their own pipeline so that students are able to grasp the idea of technology quicker is to invite them from time to time to the plant so that they can see the real activities. So I think for me, that unlocks a lot of things. Therefore, you don't have anonymous who is a PR student wondering whether they can feature into the economic, into the automotive sector, because you have exposed them and giving them that space to be able to have access to either the plant or to the sales and marketing environment of the sector. So I think for me, the key here is really continuing to go from basic education, giving exposure, allowing learners to be able to have access to these plants. That way, this is no longer a far-fetched idea. They're reading about it, they're seeing it and coming into contact.
Right. And I like what you're saying there. Remember the Tebogohane School of Specialization in Haramkua at one stage created an ambulance which they took then to the John Orr School in Johannesburg. So it is basically where it starts. Let me give you a question here from Kabelo Sibanyoni, who's in Clarina. And he said, since this show is all about graduate and graduates are in danger of competing with AI, what does the future hold with the AI becoming a force to be reckoned with? And I think I posed that particular question. But for good measure, though, I'm sure you can take that for the satisfaction of Kabelo then.
Yeah, so for me, I already answered that, as you said. But I think most importantly, graduates, I think, need to migrate from programs that are more theoretically based, and more into the practicality of it. And I think it requires us who are in the sector to be engaging a lot more with, graduates. For example, the AITF currently is considering exploring into inviting a cohort of graduates that we can sort of move around into the sector to get this particular exposure. That way, I think they are a lot more exposed to all of these developments, and so on. But I think we also know that these OEMs have created programs such as Years for Youth, where they take in graduates, put them into their working environment, and expose them towards these activities and so on. And I think one of the things that we are doing today, when you say plug a graduate, is simply that is the conversation should not end today with an interview. Us remaining very close with the institution in order for us to create this level of exposure required. As I said already, with TUT, we're partnered as the AITF to give that particular exposure to some of the female entrepreneurs that we took them through a program tailor-made together with the sector in TUT. So I think a lot more of those kind of things is what we're looking at pursuing and so on. So I think be on the lookout for some of these things that will be continuing to roll out, because I think Kabel is right. It's important that we mitigate this as quick as possible.
Right. How is the future for somebody who wants to get into that space at all? You really got to look at the future and the sustainability of the industry. How is it looking?
Yeah, look, I think that for me, future is relative. I always, my own motto in life is I'm fascinated by the concept of pursuing the unknowns. I think we've stayed too far long in our comfort zone because we want to do what we know. It doesn't serve us well in our growth. I think we need to pursue discomfort. We need to pursue areas that we don't know. So I think, for me, I would like to see a lot more people raising their hands and wanting to get the exposure that they seek in order for them to, begin to tap into unfamiliar territory. Because that's how I think we're going to develop and grow and so on. So I think it's important to change the mind shift, because growth for me requires you to change how you apply yourself. And I think that's why I'm using the spirit of pursuing the unknowns in order to
Right. In terms of that particular space, though, have we done enough? Have we attracted enough investment? In other words, are we an attractive potential investor for somebody who wants to get into that space?
Yes, we are. And I assume we are talking about other companies being to be invested in the country. Most definitely. South Africa, as I said, has put in very good policy tone in favor of the positive business environment to thrive, either through incentives or through trade agreements that are put in place in order to be able to, assist companies with their business case as they currently operate in the market. But I think at the same time, the ask is, as and when they come in, to be able to help South Africa in its quest to be able to sort of create local capability, because we cannot always, get companies that come into the market, invest, yes, create jobs, yes, but capability, skill transfer, technology transfer, maybe not there, right? So it's important that it's a trade activities as they come to invest into the market. But certainly, I think the market has created a conducive environment for position.
Right. Let's take a question from Utilele Nyayi, who's in Soshanguve Rest, and he's saying, what is the future of future for females in the automotive industry? Has that grown?
Yeah. Again, this is why I was saying to you earlier on in my intro that I particularly found that many policies were gender silent.
Right.
And the AITF particularly, I think, took a very strong stance in ring fencing about 30% of its fund to go towards women-owned businesses. But I can tell you, we've seen a huge significant shift, from the sector in adopting, a lot of females into the eco space. I mean, this is a historically male-dominated environment, but I can promise you it has shifted quite a lot. I mean, there was recently a plant that was launched in Durban. The name is Hesto. They are producing cables and harnesses that goes into the car. 90% of the workforce in that company are female. So we are beginning to see a shift, and obviously a realization that it's important to have gender lens when we are thinking about activities that we do in the sector.
Been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you so much for your time, Jabulani, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. Really, really enlightening conversation, especially about an industry some of us know next to nothing about. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mooketsi. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've been quite humbled to be able to come and speak to the listeners today, and may this be of the engagement. Thank you very much.
Without a doubt, he is Mr. Jabulani Selumane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund. I want to thank you as well for those who actually sent those questions coming in. I appreciate you. All right, there's also a team, but let me first take a quick break, and then when I come back officially, we're going to wrap up the groundbreakers. It's been a heavy week of big news, and don't forget, next week we go back to our days, which is you will have this feature on a Wednesday. And Gogodi Keledi was also not here. We'll be back next week. So the program will take its normal shape. We'll bring in Bramike right at the tail end of the show at 8:30. So yeah, it was just simply owing to election. But yeah, this has been another edition of Plug a Graduate. When I come back, I do wrap it up. Before the hour 9, when I'm out of the building, don't forget the Ray Masenya will step in between the hour 9 and 12 on the Date Night Show. Simply G, good evening.
Good evening. Again?
You're good.
Why are you laughing? I came in here, right? Because I think it's somewhat maybe to forget.
Okay.
Maybe
yes.
It's my fault
Yeah.
As the management and the director of Plug Graduate. Next week on the 7th, we don't have Plug Graduate on a Wednesday this week.
Oh, you can?
We have Plug Graduate on the 7th. It's going to be at the Prestige Auditorium.
Cool.
Live on the Sisha will do his best.
Okay.
Live is going to be live on YouTube with about 350 students, with all this panel of people that you've already interviewed and some new people that were coming through.
Yeah.
So from Monday to Thursday, we're going to be basically marketing people to make way to Plug a Graduate on a Friday.
Okay.
But here's the glitch. We're not knocking off at 9 o'clock. Plug a Graduate is going to start at 10 a.m. and ends at 2 p.m. Yeah. So there's no normal programming.
Right.
Mid-morning Connections is going to be affected.
Okay.
The lunchtime redux is going to be affected.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be plugging people in live at the prestigious auditorium in Pretoria campus.
Wow. That's massive. And thank you. It's an important, very important correction. Thank you, Simply G. Going big now with our Plug a Graduate. You heard what he had to say. Coming to you live next week at a different time slot that is between, I'm told, is it 10 and 2 with all the guests that you've seen here coming to the open. It's going to be an alfresco conversation. It's an open air conversation. And let me tell you, there's been a powerful team involved in making sure that the conversation that we had with Mr. Jabulani Selumane is able to come to you live and fresh. And they will be involved again next week, taking the live feed from there and making sure that they are able to bring it to you as and when it happens. Tepitsa Kwani is the videographer and social media officer. Lesitsa Senosha is a videographer and post-production manager. Shalati Davani is the alumni and fundraising manager for TUT and PAG graduate marketing manager. Dr. Rulin Brink is the director of cooperative education at TUT. Kidibone Mahapa Telela is the station manager and producer. Hontemolefe is the programs manager and PAG graduate director. I'm told I am an on-air anchor of PAG graduate on the Groundbreakers, whatever that means. Right? Where is we are back on the 7th. You heard it right, on the 7th of June. Hopefully you are able to adjust to the times as well. Yeah, that is. Lesitsa will make sure that we come to you live. Tepiso will make sure that those, whatever that happens, and when you have a social media officer, you're thinking of probably a man who can arrest you for posting something wrong. And the word officer has quite a negative connotation to it. But he's a nice man. He'll make sure all that comes to you. Thank you so much to those who have sent all those questions. Thank you, Lesiho from Centurion in Pretoria, telling us that was the first time she was listening to PAG Graduate. Thank you so much. And tell others to do tune in, and hopefully that was not the last time. Thank you to Kabelo Sibanyoni in Clarina. Tell all people there in Clarina to listen. Well, Utsile Lenyai from Soshanguveres. I'm Obakeng Mooketsi, and this has been another edition of The Groundbreakers. I'm back again on a Monday. Gonna be breaking down the election. And up next is... Dere Masenya will take care of business between the hour 9 and 12. Remember what I always say. You don't stop because you are tired. You stop because you are done. Good night.
The Groundbreakers. Mondays to Thursdays. 7 to 9 p.m. on TUT FM.